Welcome, everybody. We appreciate your time this afternoon. As you know, you are now on the MTA Q&A that we are hosting with panelists from the Department of Treasury, and we're going to be talking about reviewing the details, the deadlines, and for the CARES Act funding. My name is Judy Allen. I'm Director of Government Relations. And again, I want to thank you for joining us today. We've allotted an hour for the presentation, questions, and discussions. But depending on the questions and our speakers' availability, we may try and go a little bit longer. So again, I'm honored to be able to host this with our panelists today and to have the two officials from Michigan Department of Treasury. These two individuals have been involved in implementing these programs over once the appropriation measure was enacted. The first I'd like to introduce is Eric Busses. He's Chief Economist and Director for the Office of Revenue and Tax Analysis with the Department of Treasury. And second, I have Eva Cole. She's the Division Administrator for Revenue Sharing and Grants Division with the Department of Treasury. So Eva and Eric, thank you. Welcome. I cannot tell you how much we appreciate your time today. We were talking a little bit prior to going live on this, how the limited time frame that you have had to work on this. It's been very, very tight to pull the programs together, as well as resolving the questions and issues that get raised, because I know I've sent you quite a few just by myself. So with that, I just want to say welcome again and start by briefly talking about Public Act 123 of 2020, and that's the act that provided the funding. There are 4 programs that receive CARES funding that local units can qualify for under that act. $200 million is the Public Safety and Public Health Payroll Reimbursement Program that Treasury is administrating, and we will be talking about that today. $100 million is the First Responder Hazard Pay Premiums Program. Again, Treasury is implementing that program, and we will be talking about that today. There are 2 others, and MTA will be providing more information to you once that's available. One is a $25 million water utility assistance program. That's through DHHS and EGLE. And the last one is a $25 million PPE reimbursement program, and that's going to be handled through DHS. So with that, we're going to specifically be talking, as I said, about the 2 programs. I'm probably going to abbreviate them and talk about the Public Safety, Public Health, Payroll Expenditure, and then the First Responder Hazard Pay Program. And we'll utilize the expertise that Eva and Eric have on these programs. So I'm going to turn it over to you and see if there's any general information that you think is important to share that's applicable to both of them. Like, for example, the applications and how long they are, or, we have to be registered with a federal registration. So please feel free to jump in and share with us those general information tips.
The general information tips is, yes, all local units must be registered with the SAM system. It depends on the program. If you register prior to July 26th, you have up until July 26th to register for it. But if you apply after that, you have to register prior to applying for the program. So that is a big thing. If you don't apply for it, then you are technically not eligible to receive the federal subrecipient funds, and therefore could not apply for the program. So it's very important to get out there right away and apply for that. We have a link on our website for the system, so you can go out to our website and click on it. And I believe I've been out there once. I think it's fairly easy. I didn't register, but I think there's instructions there that will help you walk through it.
And can I ask a question with the documentation? I noticed in both application and guidance documents, there was reference made that Treasury will deem an application submitted when complete when all supporting documentation is emailed or faxed with that. Will local units be notified if they submit and you view it's not complete?
Yes, actually, local units will receive a response either way. When it comes in, Treasury is going to review it make sure it has initials and dated on all of, there's 15 pages for both applications, and they both are very similar except for the forms and the report that's required and the certification. So we'll have staff look and make sure that everything's there, and then we'll respond one that yes, we received it, and if something's missing, we'll also respond that you need to sign a form or whatever it is that's missing, we'll let you know.
That's great, because I know yesterday, I mean, Treasury hosted in partnership with MTA and MML and MAC a webinar, so some people may have had the opportunity to participate in that, but I know that was a big question in the chat box was, will we be notified once we submit our application from Treasury? So I appreciate that clarification. There was also reference made in the guidance for both of these programs that the federal guidance is evolving and that local units are required to comply with that evolving federal guidance. How will local units know that the guidance has changed?
Both in the application and on our website, we have links to all the different the guidance, the frequently asked questions. So local units really need to stay abreast of the changing CARES Act requirements and the guidance. They need to stay abreast of that and know what's changing. We will also, as the applications say, add addendums if some of the changes affect the program. We'll add an addendum to the application. That would be for informational purposes only. Local units will not have to sign it and send it back to us.
Okay, thank you. And one last question before we get into the slides, because again, this is in both applications. There's discussion about being substantially dedicated. So what, in terms of under the Federal Act, the Federal Coronavirus Relief Funding Act, what does that mean when it's talking about substantially dedicated? And can you give us an example like what the state has done with, maybe state police or corrections, etc.?
You want to take this one, Eric?
Sure. So, as Eva will talk about, there's, 3 large requirements for eligible expenses under the Coronavirus Relief Fund. And one of those is that, the expenditures were not included in the budget adopted in March at the time of the CARES Act. But there's kind of a loophole or an exception process if they've been redirected to a substantially different function. And then the question is, well, how do you determine whether or not it's substantially different? And in the guidance that the federal government has provided, they have said that we can assume that public health and public safety expenses were all substantially dedicated to fighting COVID, unless the executive of that municipality or state decides otherwise. So at the state level, we're presuming, we're invoking that public safety and public health presumption to fund all of the Michigan State Police and the Department of Corrections during this time period as substantially different than what we had originally budgeted those positions at, and then using CARES Act dollars to support those expenditures. And I know that's a very complicated topic, and that's one of the things that states and municipalities have struggled with the most in the guidance.
Thanks, Eric. And I think that the example that you gave where the state is using this to these funds for state police and for corrections officers, I think that makes a very clear analogy for townships in terms of using it for their police and fire, and other first responders. So I appreciate that. Is there any other general information that we should cover before we get into the details of each program?
Not really. I guess the general thing would be the 15 pages of the application that people need to make sure they read the whole application, and each of the pages have on the very bottom a spot that you need to initial and date. and then you have to fill out the form, and then there's a report, and the reports on both of the applications, if you have more employees that you need to put on the report that don't fit, we have additional pages of those reports out on our website. I believe it's under the application packet portion of our website, so you can find more there, and then you would just attach it to your email along with your application packet. You also need to have it notarized on the bottom, and for the person initialing it, the person signing the form, and the person signing the certification, they should all be the same person from the local unit.
Thanks, Eva, because that was a question I was going to ask about what if I have multiple employees who are each going to take multiple lines, and the forms clearly don't offer sufficient spacing. So just go to the website then and download those forms and use those that you've provided.
Yes, the forms are, I believe, in Excel, and you can add more lines. There's 100 rows right now on the form, and you can easily add more.
Okay, great, thanks. Well, Eva, I'm going to turn it back to you and Eric and let you go through the slide presentation that you have, and then we will open up for questions. I know I've got a long list, and I know our members are shooting a lot through the chat room right now. So thank you. Keep the questions coming, and maybe some of them will be answered with the presentation that you're about to see.
Well, good afternoon. We're going to go over the two different programs like Judy mentioned. So the first program we're going to start with is the First Responder Hazard Pay Premiums Program. The program overview for this is that it's to reimburse pay for qualifying first responder hazard pay premiums provided to first responders who have performed hazardous duty or work involving physical hardship related to COVID-19. The program has $100 million available for it. There are limits on this program. Each employee is only eligible to a maximum of 1,000, and each applicant is have maximum amount of $5 million. The eligible applicants for this program are cities, villages, townships, counties, public airport operators, and ambulance operations licensed under the Public Health Code. Those are the only entities that can apply for this program. As you notice, authorities are not part of that listing. The application period is now through September 30th. However, this application is the reimbursements will be based on a first come, first served basis. And an application is deemed submitted to us when we receive all 15 pages of the application. And that would be also meaning that they would be signed. In order to get them in first come, first serve, I think I say this later, but you need to either email it to us or fax it to us so that it has a date stamp and a time stamp on it. And we really encourage you to get your applications in as soon as possible. Our distributions, our payments out, will be on a rolling basis as we can make the payments as soon as we can. We can't guarantee that we're going to get them out in a week or two, but we will get them out as soon as we can once the applications are in. The eligible recipients of the hazard pay are law enforcement officers, firefighters, emergency medical technicians, paramedics, 911 operators, local unit of government, corrections officers, airport public safety officers, eligible personnel associated with ambulance operations licensed under the Public Health Code, and private EMTs and paramedics who contract with municipalities or hospitals if the hazard pay premiums are paid through the applicant. The expenditures, as far as incurred means the date the service actually occurs. For this program, the hazard pay premium payments, local units have until September 30th to make the payments to the employees. However, to apply for the program, you can apply for the program prior to making the payments to the employees. On the report, you would indicate in the payment column the estimated date that you plan on making the payments to your employees, but you can still apply prior to making the payments. And we do encourage you to apply as soon as possible because it is a first come, first serve. The hazard pay, the amount includes only the premium paid to an eligible recipient. It doesn't include any hazard pay premiums requested to be reimbursed under the Public Safety and Public Health Payroll Reimbursement Program. or for any other funding source that's funding them. It also doesn't include fringes or payroll taxes. Requirements to apply for the funding, we went over this a little bit earlier. You must register with the federal system for award management. And like I said, you need to do this prior to submitting the application if you apply after July 26th, or if you apply prior to July 26th, you can do it up to July 26th. You need to submit us the application, all pages initialed and dated. And in the application packet, there's a form, it's Form 5723, that must be completed. And then there's the hazard pay premiums payment report, which we discussed. You fill that out. And then on the extra pages on our website, if you use those, there's a total at the top of those spreadsheets that will sum up all the extra pages amounts. And you would put that on the application packet report. There's a line for you to put the subtotal from the extra pages so that you can total your complete report. And the total from the report should equal the amount that you put on Form 5723 to be requested for reimbursement or payment. The certification must be signed and notarized. The notarized part, we are also allowing that if you don't have the ability to get it notarized right away, we are allowing you to submit them and then send us in the notarization as soon as you can, but no later than August 1st. We will probably wait to make payments. Granted, you will get your first in line is when you submit it, but until we get the notarized, we will probably not make you a payment until then, until you get that part in. Applications for submissions, the last date that you potentially could submit an application is September 30th at 11:59 p.m. But for this program, we really highly recommend you not wait for that, because once the funding is used up, there is no more funding. And if you wait till then, you're taking a chance that there is no funding. You need to submit the application to treas-cares@michigan.gov, or you can fax it to 517-335-3298. And like I said before, you should receive a response back. I know we received some applications already, and we haven't responded to those yet, but once we get moving along in our process a little bit better, you should receive a response, and I would say probably within 2 days. So that's it for the first responder program. The second program is the Public Safety and Public Health Payroll Reimbursement Program. This program actually has an earlier due date. You can move to the next slide. The purpose is to reimburse for eligible public safety and public health payroll expenditures under the CARES Act. The available funding, like Judy mentioned, is $200 million, so there's more funding here. However, the timeline for this is much shorter. The eligible applicants are cities, villages, townships, and counties. However, if a city, village, township, or county received a direct allocation from the CARES Act, they are not eligible. That includes Detroit, Kent, Macomb, Oakland, and Wayne counties. However, just to let you know, if you are a local unit, well, in this case, township, if you are a township located in Kent, Macomb, Oakland, and Wayne, you still can apply under this program. For this fund, there's going to be potentially 2 funding rounds. So right now, round 1 is open for applications to be submitted. There is a cutoff for the round 1 applications, and that is next Friday at July 17th at 11:59 p.m. This is for public safety and public health payroll expenditures incurred during the months of April and May. For round 2, this is only available if there's existing funding after round 1 has all been issued. We're going to announce that if we have extra funding. We'll probably announce that probably early August, I would guess. We should know what the funding is shortly after we go through all the applications for the first round. The second round of funding is for you could still apply for April and May payroll expenses in the second round. It is also for June and July payroll expenses. And again, if you have April and May payroll expenses, I would probably not wait until the second round. If you possibly can get your application in the first round, it's safer to get the funding versus waiting in the second round, and then you're potentially not going to have enough funding to pay for everything. For the first round distributions, we're planning on issue them no later than September 18th. For the second round, if we have a second round, we hope to have the payments issued no later than November 7th. Now, if in either round the amount of requested reimbursements is greater than the amount of funding we have, we will be prorating the payments out to local units based on their share of expenditures submitted. Expenditures. So I mentioned that the first round is for payroll expenses incurred during April and May, and the second round is incurred during April, May, June, and July. And incurred means the date the service occurs. So an example of this would be an employee, they worked May 25th through May 31st. Their payroll expense was incurred May 25th and May 31st, but you end up paying them in June. It is actually an incurred expense on May 25th through the 31st. So that would be a May incurred, so that you could request that in the first round. As far as payroll expenses, do not include any bonuses or lump sum payments except for the hazard pay or overtime. You can request hazard pay under the payroll or public safety, public health program, or you could request it under the first responder program. It's up to you. But if you request it under the public safety, public health program, you cannot request it again under the first responder program. Expenses, your payroll expenses also do not include retirement payouts or long-term leave and FMLA not due to COVID-19. The eligible expenses for the public safety and public health payroll expenditures that have not or will not be reimbursed under the first responder hazard pay premiums program or by any other federal funds. So it's important to know that you cannot have any other funds replacing your payroll expenses that you're asking for reimbursement. So only one place can reimburse you for the payroll expenses. The eligible expenditures also include overtime. They include normal leave, and sick and vacation. It includes long-term leave and FMLA due to COVID-19. You can have hazard pay, like I said, as long as you haven't requested it under the first responder hazard pay premiums program. It includes the fringes, the employer-sponsored insurance premiums, the employer's paid payroll taxes, and the employer-paid retirement contributions. Now, I know there's a lot of questions regarding contracts. The federal grants do not allow recipients to be reimbursed from two places for the same expense. To receive reimbursement under the Public Safety, Public Health program, a local unit cannot receive funding for the payroll expenses from another local unit. If a local unit has received funding from another local unit and wants to seek reimbursement for those payroll costs, the local unit must first refund the payroll portion of the contract. The next slide shows a good example of this. It shows County A, let's say they provide police service for the township, and the township pays the county a portion, and they pay for a contract for the county to provide this service. So the county has 4.5 million payroll costs for April and May, and the township part of their contract was 2 million, we'll say, for that would have been in their contract if the payroll was 2 million. So if the county wants to get reimbursed for the entire 4.5 million, they would have to refund the township the portion that pertained to the payroll, and then they could then ask for the refund of the full 4.5 million. If they do not refund the portion of the contract for the payroll, then they could only ask for the amount that the 2.5 million that would be purely county payroll expenses that were not reimbursed by another local unit. The requirements for filing are very similar. The same thing with the SAM. The round one, you must register by July 26th, but your applications are due by July 17th, so you have a little bit of time to register. The second round, you're going to have to register prior to submitting the application to Treasury. So we recommend, if you're even thinking about applying, that you get out to the SAM system and register. You're going to submit the same thing, the 15 pages to Treasury. There's a different form there, but it's very similar as far as we have a form, we have a payroll summary report, there's extra payroll summary reports out on our website. It's very similar. You can add rows to it. There's a total on it that you'll pull over into the application on the line for subtotal, and then there's a certification. And the applications for the first round, as I said before, are due 11:59 p.m. July 17th, and that's only within a week, so it doesn't give you a lot of time, but I would get them in as soon as you can. You email them to treasurecares@michigan.gov or fax them to 335-3298. And I believe that is it. So now we can answer questions.
Thanks, Eva. I greatly appreciate that. Just a point, I'm going to ask a couple questions that have come in that are applicable to both programs. And you covered this, I think, so maybe I don't even need to ask it, but it's for those townships that are in that one of those 4 counties. So just to clarify, if I'm in a county that received direct CARES funding, which would be Wayne, Oakland, Macomb, or Kent County, I still, as a township, can apply for these funds, correct?
That is correct, yes.
Great. Then we touched on this one a little bit. The local unit is part of an authority, and you've indicated that the federal guidelines, there's a prohibition for authorities. We have a number of authorities. I know there's about 50 in the state that are public authorities, public safety authorities that are created for millage purposes, for their police, fire, etc. We also have several where it's local units of government that make up that authority. For example, I know one where there's 2 townships and a village, and the village handles the payroll, but the 2 townships pay for the fire costs. So can they apply for example, if one of them is doing the payroll and the other 2 are contributing?
So, sorry, there were a lot of questions in there. So
Sorry.
I guess first off, the prohibition on authorities is kind of a combination. First of all, the way that PA 123 was written, authorities are not eligible for the program. Additionally, in your example, what we're reimbursing for here is payroll expenditures. So to the extent that somebody has contract expenditures, those are treated entirely different under the CARES Act with some of the payroll presumptions that we have, kind of some of the loopholes that are put in place for governments to be able to leverage this money for all of their public safety, doesn't apply to contracts. So in your example, and I think where the unit has payroll, so if it's an authority where the township has payroll, they can seek reimbursement for that payroll. In the same way that a contract unit would work, if they're receiving funding for that payroll expenditure, they're going to have to refund some of that money that was made under the agreement back to the townships to be able to draw down all of the payroll expenses that they have on their books.
So like Eva, you used the example of a township contracting with a county for law enforcement. My township does that. We contract for law enforcement. So the county would be the one who would have to apply for this, but they would have to refund what the township has paid them. So whether it is fire service, whether it is, law enforcement, as long as someone has it on their payroll, they're the applicant and they would have to refund to the other local unit that is part of that. Is that correct?
If they want to ask for full reimbursement of their payroll expenses, then they would have to do a refund to whoever they're contracted with. And it would be refunding non-federal funds. That's a big thing. Otherwise, if they choose not to do that, then they can't ask for full payroll reimbursement.
Yeah, I think this issue is going to be, I think we're still working with Treasury and the Budget Office, et cetera, on this because, several years ago, and this is a question that's really coming up a lot, but several years ago, local units were encouraged to consolidate and create authorities and create this established process, and now it feels like, we may be penalized in that regard. So I will tell you, I will continue the discussions, and anything that we give back, we will make sure our members know as well. So let me move to the first responder hazard pay premiums program. Question, clarification on premium payments, contingent on receiving. So I think this was a change since yesterday in terms of, and you covered it briefly, Eva, where as of previously the discussion was, I must make that payment before I can receive grant funding from the state, or I must make that payment by September 30th. Now you're stating, based on discussions, that we're able to do that, or we're able to make applications, and then we file a second form that should be available next week and ask that we get the money prior to making it. Is that correct?
Correct. I would recommend that people, if they haven't made the payment and they plan on doing it, that they apply. Don't wait for the form. The additional form we'll have next week. Start applying now. If you apply and you haven't filled out our second form, we will get back with you and make sure that you use the second form. If the second form is out next week and you haven't applied yet, if you have not made the payments out and you plan on paying them in the future, you have to do the application form, and there will be another form regarding advance payments. So, but the big thing is they need to apply, and it is okay to put on the report the estimated date that you plan on paying the hazard pay premium.
Okay, thanks. So what I hear you repeatedly is get the form in now, get the form in now, correct?
Correct.
Okay. You may have covered this one. A question was asked, is the first responder hazard pay premiums subject to payroll taxes?
Yes, they are.
Okay, thank you. Next one, are water and wastewater employees and other DPW employees eligible for the hazard pay premiums?
I'll let Eric answer, since I think he has some more on the the question just before that.
Okay.
Yeah, I just saw another question on the $1,000. So it's still, they still have to pay the payroll taxes, and any payroll taxes or fringe on that is the responsibility of the unit. So or the township in this case, so what we're reimbursing for is the premium pay for what goes to the employee. So just to clarify, I saw that in the chat. I was trying to type something, but I don't type quite fast enough to keep up.
So just to be clear, so I understand it correctly, you are a township, I'm a firefighter, you give me a premium pay, hazard pay of $1,000 or up to $1,000, and you're applying to the state, but the state gives you $1,000. You as the township are responsible for paying any of the taxes.
Correct. Any of the like FICA and Social Security.
Okay.
Yeah. And it is still taxable for the employee, so you would probably have to withhold on that as well.
Okay. Thank you. I'm going to go back. I think I know the answer, but the water, sewer, DPW employees, hazard pay?
No, they're not eligible.
Okay. Thank you.
Looks like we lost Eva.
Well, hopefully she comes back on soon.
Yeah.
Full-time, part-time, paid on call first responders, eligible for hazard pay premiums. I believe everything that you've said indicates that they are, but let's just say it one more time.
Yep. Yeah, they are all eligible. There's no requirement. That's been one of the most common questions. Can you pay part-time and full-time the same amount? Yes, you can. There's no proration for, part-time or volunteer. They're all eligible for the full amount.
Okay. Another question. I'm a township. We have police recruits. Are they eligible for that hazard pay premium?
Yes.
Okay. Good to know, because I know that was a big question yesterday.
That was a big question. Yeah. Yep. They're eligible. They fit the definition of public safety, and they're in.
We had a question from a local unit. They have paid on-call firefighters, and they've been providing a premium $10 extra per call. and they plan to continue to doing so. So their question was, yeah, we can submit an application now that will quantify what we've paid, but if we continue to pay this, can we submit a second application? Because it's first come, first served.
Right. Yeah, you can, but there's really no guarantee that the funding will be there when you get to the second application.
Okay. So they could just say, we intend to make this much of a payment to them.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yes.
The last one that I have right now, and then I'm going to jump into the public safety, but then I'll go back to this next list because they're coming in fast and furious. If a first responder is employed by Township A, but is also employed part-time by Township B, the question is, can each local municipality pay them that premium hazard pay and
Yes.
get reimbursed for it?
Yep. There's no, restriction on, one person getting it from multiple units. We have had the question of, if it's within the same unit, if they're a police officer and a part-time firefighter on a volunteer basis, then they could not. But if it's different units of government, they can receive two.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. I'm going to switch to the public safety, public health payroll reimbursement program. And I think we've already talked about this, so maybe I will just skip this question. If you contract with law enforcement, so I think we're good on that one. But as a follow-up to that, if I'm contracted, like again, my township contracts, and the county can apply. But what if the county doesn't apply? What if they choose not to? Is there anything I can do as a township because I'm paying for those officers?
Right. Unfortunately, no. I mean, the restriction there is the county could not apply for all of their payroll. They would only be able to apply for the payroll that they haven't been reimbursed on. So, we're assuming and hoping that they, do apply for that funding at the county level, and then, refund the township with the non-federal dollars that they received from the township.
Okay, thank you. Eva, you're back. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I just got knocked off.
Okay. Another question on the public safety is for local units that contract with an ambulance service. Can they include this cost in their public safety, public health payroll expenditures application if they contract with them?
No, because the payroll isn't on their books, so that's a contract cost, not a payroll cost that they have.
Okay, thank you. I think, Eva, you covered this one about round 2, and you said there would be some notification, likely August, if I recall correctly, that if there's funds available for round 2, it would be Treasury notifying local units, and we would definitely notify our members if there's sufficient funds for round 2. Is that correct?
We'll put it out on our website, and we'll do a press release, and we'll let all the associations know when the round opens.
Okay, great. Thank you. Will hazard pay be approved before payment must go out? Sorry, I think we've already touched that one. So yes, you can apply and get reimbursed, but you need to fill out that second form. But key thing is apply now. If an employee worked in April and May, but they've resigned and they've left to go somewhere else, can we still include them in either the hazard pay or as part of our public safety expenditures?
So for the payroll program, yes, you can, because the township would have those payroll expenses. On the hazard pay, I saw Eva perking up because I apologize, we don't have an answer to this one yet. This is one we got this morning, and we're a little unclear as to how that would work. If they're not an employee of the unit anymore, we're not sure that you can make that payment, but we need to dig into that a little more. So I apologize, we don't have an answer on that one yet, unless Eva made progress in the last half hour since we talked about that question.
Yeah, no, but if they did give them a payment, let's say they did make a payment in April and May, and the person then left, they can ask for that to be reimbursed. But as far as I think what Eric's saying is, if they used to work there, you didn't pay them a hazard pay, can you go back and pay them a hazard pay? We don't have an answer to that part of it.
My guess is that's going to be one of your frequently asked questions and answers, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. There's a question regarding, again, we talked briefly about yesterday's webinar, and there was indication that personnel that were diverted to substantially different functions due entirely to the COVID-19 public health emergency. Can we include finance time participating in webinars regarding funding and the time it takes to prepare a request under the funding source? Also, whether or not they can include time setting up laptops for remote employees activity, because you're going to have, I mean, I just know from our association, we all had our remote set up. And so can that cost be, payroll costs be included in that? I'm assuming it would be for public safety, public health employees, just to clarify, but the question does not specifically clarify. And the question about establishing a Zoom account, well, that would not be a payroll or public health payroll expense, correct?
Correct. So to answer the first part of your question, it's complicated because we have overlying restrictions here. We have the boilerplate that Michigan enacted in this program, and then we have the CARES Act program. And, it's kind of an overlay of the two on what's eligible for this program. So under the program that has been enacted, it's public safety and public health only. IT costs or overhead or HR is not eligible under this program as defined because this is specifically for public health and public safety. To the extent that we have future programs or, like with the, future revenue sharing August payment, then it depends on what's eligible under the CARES Act. And that's a little more complicated because we can't leverage the public safety presumption for some of those IT costs or overhead.
Okay, and just to clarify your comment about the August revenue sharing payment, we're talking about the CVT statutory payment because
correct.
While
correct.
it's not done yet, there's a budget deal that states that if you are eligible for CVT revenue sharing, the August payment will be eliminated, but you will be able to receive some money, CARES Act funding, for CARES Act purposes in place of that, correct?
Correct.
Okay,
yeah.
good.
Yeah.
And I think one big distinction for me when we were looking at these programs was that it's a premium pay program and it's a public safety and public health payroll expenditure program. And I state that only because the next question indicates we installed tempered glass around our front reception and plexiglass in our clerk and rec offices. Can we use these dollars to pay for that? And that would not be a payroll expenditure.
Correct. Yep. And that's not eligible right now under these programs, but that would be an allowable use under the CARES Act for future CARES Act restrictions. So.
Okay. And I do know for some of the costs with elections, Secretary of State has talked about providing different things, but that's a different webinar that I'm not doing today.
Yeah. Yes. Right.
So. The question about can we request $1,000 first responder for hazard pay but distribute the money received based on runs attended? They have a volunteer fire department.
So the way that you can do it as either a lump sum or, as a part of their wage and salary. So you could certainly distribute it based on runs made under the caps. But I guess the question would be, you would still have to pay the money back if you didn't leverage all of that. You wouldn't be getting the $1,000 and then be able to say that, you only spent $700 of it. You would, does that answer the question? So I think you can base it on runs made. But you would have to then, if you didn't use all of that based on the proration, you couldn't draw all of the $1,000 down.
Okay, so
Yeah.
Go ahead, Eva.
In addition to that, because I don't think we really covered it, really what the second report is for people that are requesting reimbursement, or not reimbursement, but funds that haven't been paid out yet. So if you say you're requesting funds now and you're going to pay them out September, the second report is going to require you to submit a report that says that shows that you have actually paid out what you said you were going to. So in Eric's instance, if you only paid the $700 out and you requested $1,000, you're going to have to return $300 to the state.
Okay. This one again is a contract. The question is, are expenditures paid to other municipalities for contracted services such as police or fire eligible for the expenditure program? And Eva, I think this is going to go back to your comment about, who applies, and Eric's about who applies. So if I contract with another township for police or fire services, who submits the application, and do I get money refunded from that applicant?
Right. So the unit that has the payroll costs can seek reimbursement but has to, if it's received other money under a contract, has to refund the payroll portion of that payment back to the other township before it can seek full reimbursement.
This goes to the form about this next question about filling out the form. Do we fill out one line per person per pay period, or one line per person for each month?
Whatever your pay period is, you'll be filling out the employee's name and their pay period. So if you have weekly pay periods, you would have the name 4 times for a month.
Or if I do monthly, then I just have the person's name once per month.
Yes.
Okay. This one I think is we've already answered. It's whether or not hazard pay would be paid out before you receive the grant. But we've talked about that a few times. Please clarify how the public safety, public health, well, they're using public safety, public health hazard premium pay. So I'm not sure what can be used to pay first responders payroll when one of the CARES requirements is that the payroll was not previously budgeted.
Right. So if it was budgeted, there's a provision that allows it to be covered if it was redirected to address the COVID pandemic. And as you know, for administrative ease, the federal government has said anything that's public safety or public health can be presumed to be different. So that's the exception process to that requirement in the CARES Act.
Okay.
Right.
Because
It is up to the jurisdiction to make that determination and to keep any form of documentation available in case they get audited to support that decision.
okay.
Yep.
Thank you. Law enforcement support staff, are they eligible for hazard pay?
No, I don't think they meet the definition of a law enforcement officer.
Okay. We also have
Now,
another-
one clarification there. I mean, it does outline that 911 operators and dispatch. So, I guess it's hard to know exactly what they mean by support staff, but admin staff or finance or HR, no, they would not be eligible.
Okay, thank you. We've had this one, will the hazard pay be taxable wages to the recipients? And you've indicated yes.
Yep.
In your example, if the county does not reimburse the money to the township, can the township then apply for the funds even though they do not have the actual employees? And I think we've answered this one.
Yeah.
But I'll let you go ahead.
Yeah, no, they can't. They don't have the payroll expenditures to reimburse.
This one I think we've answered as well. Are we able to submit a filing for hazard pay for what we already paid out and another filing for a later date for the difference of up to $1,000? I think, Eva, we lost you during this part, and Eric answered it and said you could do that, but first come, first serve, and there's no guarantee a second application. Well, Eric, you answer that. I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Sure. Yeah. There's no guarantee that funding will be available.
So you
Okay.
tell them to apply for the whole 1,000?
We didn't get into that, but yes, under the advance, you could apply for the whole 1,000 and then refund to the state anything you haven't used.
Right. In that instance, you would have 2 lines for the employee, the amount that you're already paid out, a row for that, and then a row for the amount that you haven't paid out yet.
Well, I mean, from a layman's perspective, if I were a local unit and maybe I'm doing the $10 paid extra per run that some of them are doing, or maybe they're doing a certain amount. I know one township said they're doing 1.5 times per run. And it's going to be different for each local municipality what that will amount to. But so the options would be that you apply for the full 1,000, you spend if you have a set amount you're going to spend, then you refund the difference as Eva indicated. Or what if we just say, okay, we're going to pay, if we qualify and receive on that first come, first serve basis, we're going to pay each of the employees that qualify under this grant program. We're going to just give them a flat 1,000.
Yep. It's up to the local unit to decide how they want to make that payment. So they could do what they would like.
Right.
Okay.
It would probably be easiest for the township in that situation to just pay them the normal amount and give them the $1,000 in a lump sum.
From my perspective, I think that would work, but everybody has a different way of setting it up. Just we want to make sure that they're eligible and they're able to access and draw down on those funds. So the next question is from a township that said, we have private organizations that contract with their township for police service. If payments received by the township for April and May services are returned to those organizations, can the townships apply for reimbursement of those payroll costs as well?
So in that case, no. So we had this question related to like universities and community colleges that are contracting for police service. So since they're not an eligible unit in this application, the funding is not allowed to be reimbursed for those types of services.
Okay. This is a question that I don't think we've covered, but when we're talking about first responders and the hazard pay, are on-call EMTs and fire personnel eligible as well?
Yeah.
Okay. And can they prorate it according to the number of runs? But I think we've kind of covered that where it's up to the local jurisdiction whether they want to do it on a per run basis or a flat $1,000.
Yep, exactly.
Okay. Can the hazard pay premium be contingent on if we receive the grant? Well, we've covered that. Yes, that's a change from yesterday. So yes, it can be. Yesterday it was that you had to apply and you had to expend the funds by September 30th. Now you will be required to get your application in today, tomorrow, as soon as possible, and then fill out a second form that indicates you want to pay upon receipt. So.
Just to clarify there, though, you still do have to pay by September 30th.
Okay.
It's just we would be giving you the cash up front, or if you so choose. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that clarification because that was a point I missed. So.
Yep.
Do paid on-call fire department qualify? Yes, we will move past that one. Office support staff of a fire department eligible? I think.
No, under both programs.
Okay. What if a township? What if a township contracts with 3 other townships for the fire service? Should they all apply?
So only the group that has the payroll can apply, but then they would be required to refund the payroll portion of their payment received under the contract to those other units to get full utilization of the funding.
This is a clarification on the first responder hazard pay, the $1,000 maximum per employee. If you have part-time firefighters, do they have to have actually made calls or runs during April and May, because they may still be making them now. Maybe some made them, some did not, but we want to treat them all the same. How would you answer that question?
That's a good question. So the April and May timeframe is only for the public safety, public health payroll reimbursement program. There's no April and May requirement on the hazard pay. So if they are, let's assume they're a brand new employee as of July 1st, and you're going to give them $1,000 before September 30th, you could seek reimbursement for that.
Great, thank you. And good point about it. The 2 months. Only that applies to the public safety, public health payroll. Is there a difference between a municipality contracting for law enforcement and a private organization contracting for law enforcement services? Not sure who would apply.
Not sure. Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure I understand the question. Eva, do you want to?
No, can you say the question again?
The question was, is there a difference between a municipality contracting for law enforcement and a private organization contracting for law enforcement services? So I'm unclear who they're contracting with.
Well, we'll assume they're contracting with, let's say, a county or a township. It don't matter, any of the local units that are eligible to apply. I would still say that the eligible local unit that can apply cannot ask for reimbursement for the contract piece that they're receiving.
Right.
Okay. And I know we're at the 2 o'clock. Do you guys have a couple more minutes for 2 more questions?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Unless Shelley sends me more. So if the contract with another entity does not mention payroll, but only covering fire and EMS services, and the payroll strictly with the original entity, do we need to reimburse the contracted entity, or how do we determine how much is for payroll and how much for his equipment and supplies? So let me walk back through that one. You have a contract with another entity that doesn't cover the payroll. It only covers fire and EMS services, which I'm assuming would, and the payroll strictly is retained by the original entity.
Sure. So that's a good question. And I assume that most contracts are like that, right? I mean, in most cases, the township, when they're contracting with the county, let's say they're giving them $1 million for those 2 months. Well, only a portion of that full amount is attributable to payroll, because you're covering costs for, cars and overhead and all of the other things that a police officer may need. So it's going to be a unit by unit decision on what proportion of that they reimburse. If there is a basis for how they determine that amount, they could use that, or they could look at the overall department budget at the county level and say, well, 60% is payroll, 40% is overhead, so we're going to reimburse the township for 60% of their payments from those 2 months.
Okay.
Does that help? Any
I think so. And if not, if it doesn't answer the question for the person who answered, I'm going to defer them to go to the helpline with Treasury that we had that we will also have on our webpage as well. So can public safety workers receive funds under the public safety, public health payroll expenditures, and then the same workers receive a pay premium under the hazard pay? So based on what you said, if I'm a public safety worker, I can receive, if I'm one of the identified public safety workers, I can receive hazard pay.
Yes. So the clarification there is you can get reimbursement for the same person, but you can't double count the expenditures. So let's say you've paid the person a hazard pay in May. You can either seek reimbursement through the hazard pay program for that expenditure or through the payroll program for that expenditure. But let's say you didn't pay any hazard pay in April and May. You can seek their full payroll for those months and then give them a hazard pay bonus in August for the same person, and that's okay. The issue is for the same $1,000 that you paid them in April or May, you can't submit reimbursements through both programs for that same $1,000 payment.
But I could do it in August.
Yes. So if, let's say you did make a hazard pay payment to them in April and May, you could also pursue full reimbursement through the public safety, public health payroll program, and then apply for an additional $1,000 through the hazard pay program that you would then pay them in August.
Okay. Couple more questions here. One says, is the second form needed for advanced hazard pay payments available now? That will be next week?
Next week, yep.
Okay.
But they can apply now if they'd like.
Yes.
So fill out the application form now, get it in, look for the second form, and indicate on there that you'd like the advance payment so that you can then, once you're awarded, you can make those premium hazard pay payments. Okay.
Yeah.
I think that covers the next one too, because it was saying if we have to pay the hazard pay by a certain time, can we get the grant? But I think that answers that one as well. Firefighters on call for different townships in same county, they're paid for by all or just one. That I'm not clear. So let me, firefighters that are on call for different townships within the same county jurisdiction, are they paid for by all or just one? I think if they're paid for individually from each township, the township can then apply for that
Yep.
premium hazard pay.
Yes.
Yep.
If
And
there's
both
one,
townships could.
correct, all townships could, but if it's only one that pays them, then it's whoever has that payroll or makes that payment,
Yeah.
correct?
Yep. So you've got it. You can answer all these yourself.
No, I can't. As long as you guys are right behind me, right on the screen with me, I'm good. So
You've got it down.
I think this one counts to one we've answered before, but I'm going to just raise it. We have one firefighter who left in May. Can I submit my hazard pay request for the current employees and then submit another request for the employee that resigned if it's decided we can request it for former employees?
That was
Eva, I'll defer to you.
well, that's the one question that we haven't quite made a decision on yet. So,
Right. They're asking, though, can you apply now for the known people and file a separate once we do determine? And
oh yeah, they can apply twice if they want.
yeah, I think that's fine.
But just should they make it very clear on that subsequent application that it is for an employee that's a former employee?
Yes, that would be nice.
Yes.
Okay, because I wouldn't want someone to think, oh, here's this township and they submitted this, and now they're submitting that, but there's no delineation between the two. So and again, to our members watching, please check the frequently asked questions that will be up next week likely, if not at the end of this week on the Treasury website that you saw on the slide, and we will have posted, and we'll probably post it all over just so you guys get lots of calls and emails and
Yeah.
because this is it's very complicated, and I have to say kudos to you and your team for what you've done in putting this together in less than 2 weeks with the federal guidance that keeps evolving, etc. So let me ask one more question here. Are the typically budgeted fire department salaries, wages for car accidents, medical and fire calls eligible or not eligible for the hazard pay program?
So we're just reimbursing in the hazard pay for the hazard pay premium. So there's no,
What type
anything
of work?
other than that. There's no equipment or anything that's eligible for either of these.
Okay, so some local units have, when they do the runs, there's a typical amount or maybe a set amount that you would receive if you're doing for a car accident or medical or fire call, whatever that might be. Here's the salary and wages for these type of runs. Those would be eligible for the public safety, public health payroll expenditure reimbursement?
Yeah, their base salary would be eligible under that. under the payroll program. And I think I'm seeing in the chat maybe that the original question, they're trying to clarify that the question was on the payroll program, but there also, there's no equipment or anything else that's eligible there under this program. There may be under the CARES Act more broadly, but that's not in these programs.
Okay, thank you. Well, we've almost gone 10 minutes over, so I just want to say thank you. I cannot thank you enough on behalf of our members for your participation and taking time to share, because I know there's a lot of people who are requesting your assistance, and then you still have your regular work and this on top of it, providing the answers. So just as a reminder to our members, there's a helpline that there's also going to be frequently asked questions on the website. And the two key things I would say, and I'm going to let Eva and Eric do a brief wrap up or comments that they think their parting statement might be. But the deadline for the public safety, public health is July 17th. You've got to get it in by that time. And then in terms of the hazard premium pay, that the sooner the better. And watch for the second form if you want to request that you receive the grant, because it's a first come, first served, and the sooner you get in, the more likely chance you'll have of being funded. So Eva, any final comments that you would like to share with our members today?
Just the big one, like you said, get your hazard pay application in as soon as possible. The deadline for the public safety is next Friday, July 17th. Make sure when you send it in that you are looking at the email address. We are not allowing extensions for any of these. So if you send it to the wrong email address, it's too late. So look at the email address, go through the email address 4 or 5 times to make sure you didn't type it wrong. I know under the CVTRS program, quite a few times we've had someone just leave out a letter. So make sure you do not type it wrong. We are not doing an extension. If you submit it late after the 11:59, you go into round 2 automatically.
So this is where cut and paste is important.
Yes.
Yes.
We should also be responding once you send it in. Of course, we're not going to be responding probably after 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock on Friday. So if you wait till the last minute, you're just taking your chances. Otherwise, we should be responding that we at least received your application. And if you don't receive a response, you may want to call us and find out if we did receive it, and we can let you know.
Eric?
No, thanks for having us. And yeah, just, we have a team of people answering the phones 8 to 4 o'clock every day for the next week. So, they're just getting trained on this subject like everybody is. So bear with us. I know, we've got about 200 emails in the inbox and about 100 phone calls that on Fridays it's just me and Eva because everybody's furloughed. So we're trying our best, and we'll definitely get back to you as soon as we can. But yeah, feel free to send us an email, reach out, and we'll do our best to get back to you as soon as we can.
Well, thank you. And hopefully, by your willingness and participation here today, we've alleviated some of those emails and calls for you.
Yeah,
it
that's
helps
the goal.
us to help our members, and if we can help you in this, that's a great partnership as well. So thank you again, and to the township officials that are participating in this today, thank you. Thank you for your questions that you submitted. Hopefully this was helpful for you, and you can, proceed with these forms and get them in as soon as possible. The last thing I will say is please visit MTA online at michigantownships.org or call or email. We're happy to help in any way we can. We may not know the answer right off the top, but you know who I'm going to if we get a question. It's going to be Eva or Eric. So, there's going to be issues that come up that, we don't know the answers. We've already had, 2 or 3 in the last 24 hours. So I appreciate everybody's patience as we move through this. It's a short crunch timeline and a lot of complicated information and questions. So thank you, everyone. Thank you again, Eric and Eva, and have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.